right about now. We're going to share our screen, or I'll share my screen, and we're going to study this together. Remember Joseph in our story. Yosef has been sold as a slave to Potiphar, sold out by his brothers to the Midianites, to the Philistines, however that kind of played itself out. And he ends up by Potiphar, and he's very successful. Although he's a slave, whatever he touches turns to gold. And as we discussed it was Wednesday when we last met. On Wednesday, we saw in the Torah that his master, Potiphar, left him access to everything except for the bread, except for the lechem. And as Rashi points out, that is a euphemism for his wife. He basically said, you have access to everything except my wife. That's the one thing that you don't have access to. Well, guess what happens next? Here we go. Genesis chapter 39. This is going to be starting with verse number 7, 6th reading of Vayeishev. Now it came to pass after these events that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Now that's very forward speaking. That's very, very clear as to what she wants. She says, lie with me. This is what I'd like. All right. Let's see if we have a Rashi on this. Yeah, nothing too dramatic here. Okay, let's continue the narrative. But he refused. Vayima'en. And he said to his master's wife, behold, with me, my master knows nothing about anything in the house, and all he has, he has given into my hand. What he says essentially is, how could I violate my master's trust? Your husband's trust. He has given me everything. He's trusted me with everything, and I can't violate that trust. This would not be good. Now, in the Torah, you should know the word vayima'en, which is he refused. That word is written with a shalsheles. So it's with a cantillation note that means that you read it up and down and up. Sorry, the tune that you sing it as you chant it goes up and down and up and down and up and down 3 times. It's like goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So what's the significance of that? So the commentators explain that every time you have a shalsheles, one of these cantillation notes that goes up and down, it signifies a struggle, an inner struggle with the character that the character is having, which means that even though it seems like the character, this individual made a choice, but it wasn't easy. And our sages tell us that that this is true with Joseph, that Joseph refused, but part of him wanted to not refuse. Part of him wanted to consent to what she was proposing. And it was only born of a fierce struggle that vayima'en, that he refused. I will elaborate on this a little bit more after we read a few more verses. We'll get back to this idea. I just want to tell you straight up, right off the bat, that when he refused, it wasn't so simple that he just said no. He was entertaining it inside a lot. Now, let's continue. In this house, he says, there's no one greater than I. And he, my master, has not withheld anything from me except you, insofar as you are his wife. Now, how can I commit this great evil and sin against God? So that is his final statement. He says, look, he trusts me, he put me in charge, he gave me access to everything except for you. So how can I commit this great evil? Not only violating his trust, but violating the trust against God, sinning against God. Let's continue. Verse 10, now it came about when she spoke to Joseph day in and day out, so it wasn't just a one-time request, it was day in and day out, that he did not obey her to lie beside her and to be with her. Basically, she said, let's find this Rashi. Basically, she said, to lie beside her even without intercourse. In other words, she said, let's just lie down together. Nothing has to happen. Just lie down with me. He refused day in and day out. Verse 11, and it came about on a certain day and that he came to the house to do his work, and none of the people of the house were there in the house. In other words, it was just him and her alone. Typically, there were more people around the house. It was a busy household, busy place. But it was a certain day. Rashi says, "What's the certain day?" It was a holiday for the locals. It was the local holiday, so everybody was in the house of worship, whatever that looked like. And this was in Egypt. Remember, ancient Egypt. So everyone was out of the house. And according to our sages, she basically told everybody that she's not feeling well that day. So she can't go with everybody. Everyone like went to the celebration or whatever it was. And she said, "You know what? Go without me. I'm staying home. I don't feel well." That was all a setup for her to be alone with Joseph. Okay. So what happened? Verse 12. So she grabbed him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. So again, she grabs onto his jacket, right? Cloak, and he just runs and it's in her hand. Now it happened, verse 13. Now it happened, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, that she called to the people of her house and she spoke to them, saying, "Look, he, my husband, brought us a Hebrew man to mock us. He came to lie with me, but I called loudly." Basically, she completely flips the script, or she completely flips the narrative. And she says, "Look at this guy. This Hebrew, they weren't Jews then. I mean, whatever, unofficially, but this Hebrew man, right? This Ivri, this Hebrew came to mock us." And that's not only mock. Mock means like satire, or like an event where somebody's getting roasted. Not mock us, but like sport with us, or harm us. "He came to lie with me, but I called loudly." Let's continue. "And it happened that when he heard that I raised my voice and called out, he left his garment beside me and he fled and went outside." So she completely says a different narrative. She says that what happened was he was trying to force his way on me, and then I was shouting, and when he heard me shouting, he got frightened, and he left his garment here. But he was ready to go, and I pushed him away, and I scared him off, and that's why his garment is here. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. So this is what she told. Immediately she told the neighbors the story, right? Immediately she told the neighbors, "This guy tried to attack me, tried to rape me, etc." And I scared him off. And she kept the garment until Potiphar, her husband, came home. And she told him, her husband, the same thing, saying, "The Hebrew slave that you brought to us came to me to mock me. And it happened when I raised my voice and called out, that he left his garment beside me and fled outside." So again, she told the story to the neighbors, and then she told the same story to her husband. "Now it came about when his master heard his wife's report that she spoke to him, saying, 'Your slave did such things to me that his wrath burned.'" Right? So when Potiphar heard the report saying, "Your slave did these things to me," so he got very angry. What does that mean, "Your slave did things to me"? I believe that Rashi has a very interesting commentary on this. Let's see, Rashi. Yeah. Basically, during intercourse, in the context of intimacy, she told him this, and that is the meaning of "your slave did such things to me," meaning such acts of intimacy. In other words, she told her husband that it wasn't just he tried, but that he actually did things to her. And in the course of intimacy, she would say, "Oh, this is what he did to me." And then he got that really got him angry. Potiphar, the husband. Where are we? Okay. So what happens? So what happens next? Verse 20. "So Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were imprisoned, and he was there in prison." In case you didn't know, it says 3 times the word prison, or a form of prison. So Joseph is put in a prison. I can't imagine that it was a comfortable place to be in ancient Egypt. We're talking about 3,500 years ago or more, 3,600 years ago in ancient Egypt. Probably the prisons were not such pleasant places to be. That's where he was thrown. Verse 21. "Nonetheless, despite his new challenge, the Lord was with Joseph, and he extended charisma to him, and he gave him favor in the eyes of the warden of the prison. So here's what you need to know about Joseph. Wherever he is, he rises to the challenge. Wherever he is charismatic, and he is dynamic, and he is beloved by everybody. Sometimes a little too beloved. Okay, 22. So the warden of the prison delivered all the prisoners who were in the prison into Joseph's hand. In other words, Joseph became somewhat in charge of the prison. And whatever they did there, he was the one who did it. So whatever happened in the prison, Joseph was in charge. The warden of the prison, like Potiphar before him, did not inspect anything that was in his hand, for the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made him prosper. This is something, it says matzliach. Matzliach means successful or prosperous. Joseph was successful. Whatever he did, Joseph was successful because God had blessed him. So when he was in Potiphar's house, he was successful. When he was thrown into prison because of what Potiphar's wife said, he was successful. Okay, let me stop sharing and share a few, stop sharing the screen and share a few ideas. First of all, let me check in. So far, the story makes sense? Today's reading? Yes? Thumbs up if it makes sense? Yes?
Rabbi?
Yes.
Rabbi?
Yes.
But I mean, one could say that being thrown in prison is not successful, right?
Yeah, it's not. But the question is, but in this case, there's nothing that he could have done differently. Like, what were his options? To be with her, that wasn't gonna happen. To not be with her, it got him in prison. So I think the way I understand it is like this: there are certain things that we can control, and there are certain things that we can't control. Him being in prison, right, was a situation that he couldn't really control. He can't control her response to him turning her down. But what he can control is how he responds to what she does to him, or to what Potiphar did to him, or what the system did to him, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. He controls his own reaction. He could be bitter. He could be angry. He could seek revenge. He could be despondent. He could be depressed. He could want to give up. Or he can be charismatic and personable and successful in whatever he does. This, to me, this is why, and I told you this when we started, Joseph to me, like this week, Joseph to me is my favorite character in Torah. Because, I mean, Abraham is a larger than life, and Isaac and Jacob, these are larger than life characters. But for me, Joseph is the archetype, the prototype of somebody who faces challenges, some maybe of their doing, some not of their doing, but despite it all, is able to stay positive, stay focused, and stay successful, no matter what is being thrown at them. And I think it's such an important lesson for life. It's like if we could all be Josephs, life would be so radically different. How much time do we spend thinking, I can't believe this happened to me or that happened to me, or if only this, that, or the other. Joseph didn't spend, at least the way the Torah tells it, not 1 second in that space. Never, why me, why this, why that, I'm so angry, I'm so sad. Never, not getting involved in the whole thing. I'm here on a mission. I'm here to do something. By the way, the word mission is not my own word. It's the word that Joseph, much later in the story, tells his brothers when his brothers are shocked that he ended up in Egypt and he's the viceroy. He said, don't worry that you sold me here as a slave. You didn't sell me. It's not you. God sent me on a mission here. And that wasn't like a 2020 hindsight situation. Well, now that things have turned out, I could see that it was all for a blessing. No, the reason why it became a blessing is from the beginning, he looked at it forward facing with the perspective of this is intended for me. This is where I need to be. This is my calling right now in the moment, whether I understand it or not. This is where I need to be. So he never disconnected from the reality and from the situation. And because of that, God was with him. You see, it's when we fight reality that we unplug from the source. How much time do we spend fighting what's right in front of us, right? I don't like it. So I'm going to fight it. I'm going to resist it. How much time, how many years of our lives do we spend fighting what's right in front of us? That's the way it works. Joseph didn't. He embraced it. I'm in Potiphar's house. I'm going to do a good job. I'm in prison. I'll be successful here. He never fought it. And because he didn't fight it, He was plugged into the experience. And when you're plugged into the experience, you're plugged into God, who ultimately is behind all experiences. And that opens the channel for the blessing as well. Hope that makes sense. I want to share with you, going back to the struggle that Joseph had. The Talmud has a lot of commentary on this. The Talmud gets very, very in depth about Joseph's inner struggle with should I, shouldn't I, with Potiphar's wife. The Talmud has varying accounts. One account is that he was that day. I told you about the Shalshelas, the Vayimain. He refused, how that was the product of much inner conflict. That was the first time. But she, every single day, again and again and again, and then that one day that no one was home because everyone was celebrating, and she was at home because she was allegedly sick. That one day, the Talmud says, he actually decided, yes, I'm going to do it. The Talmud says that day he had decided yes. She wore him down or whatever it was. Or he decided yes. The Talmud says that what happened? The last moments, right before he was about to go ahead with it, the image of his father appeared to him. And because the image of his father appeared to him, he stopped. It says even in the Talmud that he dug his nails into the ground to kind of like snap out of it. Like he had to like physically like restrain himself. But what was the catalyst? According to one tradition, it was seeing the image of his father in his mind. So first of all, that speaks to the idea, to the power of role models and how important it is that we have role models. Like when we're in a difficult situation, who do we imagine? Do we have an image, a picture? Do we have, a parent, a grandparent, a mentor, someone, right, who is a beacon? What's the word I'm looking for? A lighthouse, right? Some sort of directional aid to help us navigate through the difficulty. For Joseph, it was his father. When he imagined his father, he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't go ahead with it. But the Rebbe explains, or Chassidus explains something even deeper on this. What was it specifically about the appearance of Jacob, that his father Jacob, that snapped him out of it? So there is a tradition that says that Jacob's face looked like the face of Adam. Adam, like the first human being. So when he saw his father's face, he also saw Adam. And seeing Adam changed everything. Why? Because Adam reminded him of how important every single action is. To give you a little bit of context here, Joseph was alone in Egypt. No family, no friends. His family, his brothers, literal brothers, had sold him out as a slave. He could have felt alone, abandoned, and insignificant. And when you feel alone, abandoned, and insignificant, then what you do, if you feel that way, not you specifically, but if one feels that way, then one would feel that their actions are likewise insignificant. Right? It doesn't matter what I do. Right? What Joseph could have easily thought, like, if I go along with her request, who cares? Right? No one's going to know about it, and no one cares about me or what I do. That's what he could have thought. Then he reminded himself about Adam. He saw his father's face, which looked like Adam, and he remembered about Adam. That one small action can change the world. One small, seemingly insignificant action, taking a bite from the forbidden fruit, can dramatically change and alter the course of history. Seeing his father's face was enough of a deterrent, or a reminder and a deterrent to not make a negative choice, to not make a bad choice. Anyway, that's the way that Jewish mystical thought explains this Talmudic passage, that he saw his father's face and he did not go ahead with his sin. What else did I want to share? I think that's it. All right, so he ends up in Egypt, and that's going to set the stage for the seventh reading, which we'll read right now. So he's in prison. Once again, he's successful. Whatever he touches turns to gold. He's successful in prison. Here we go. Hold on. Let's get this back up. All right, seventh reading. Here we go. This is it. This contains the next set of dreams. Remember, Joseph had a few dreams at the beginning of the portion. about his own status, his own stature. His brothers hated him because of it. Now we have the next round of two dreams. Genesis chapter 40, verse number 1. Now it came about after these events of Potiphar's wife and Joseph in prison, that the cupbearer of the king of Egypt, so the cupbearer would be the butler of Pharaoh, and the baker, so the butler and the baker, sinned against their master, against the king of Egypt. What was the sin? So we know on our tradition that the butler brought Pharaoh a glass of wine that had a fly in it, and the baker brought him bread that had a stone in it. So Pharaoh was upset at both of these attendants, at the butler for the fly and the baker for the stone in the bread. And Pharaoh, verse 2, Pharaoh became incensed at his two chamberlains, at the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he placed them in the prison of the house of the chief of the slaughterers, right? So he put him in the prison of Potiphar, into the prison, the place where Joseph was imprisoned. Okay, so that very same prison is now where the butler, the royal butler, and the royal baker are. And the chief of the slaughterers appointed Joseph to be with them, and Joseph served them, and they were a year in prison. Now, both of them dreamed a dream, each one his dream on the same night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison. So each one had a dream, and each one had some sort of meaning to the dream. Let's see what Rashi says on that. Each one dreamed a dream similar to the interpretation destined to befall them. In other words, they had a dream that was a prophetic vision. That's the simple meaning. Take a look at the midrashic meaning, as Rashi says. The midrashic meaning is that each dreamed both dreams, meaning that each dreamed his own dream and the interpretation of his companion's dream. So each one had their own dream and saw also the meaning of the other one's dream. That is the meaning of what's stated later. Now the chief baker saw that he had interpreted well. So, because who is it? The baker. Yeah, the baker saw that that Joseph had gotten the butler's interpretation right because he had actually dreamed the interpretation. Anyway, either way, they each had a dream, their own prophetic vision. And Joseph came in the morning. Oh, but one thing's important to know. They didn't know the meaning of their own dream. So Joseph came to them in the morning and he saw them, and behold, they were troubled. Their faces were, not in a good place. And he asked Pharaoh's chamberlains who were with him, the butler and the baker, in the prison of his master's house, saying, why are your faces sad today? Madua penechem ra'im hayom. Why are your faces sad today? And they said to him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. Joseph said to them, don't interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me now. In other words, if God so wishes, God will bless me with the ability to interpret your dreams, but there is an interpretation, and perhaps I can help. So the butler goes first. So the chief cupbearer related his dream to Joseph, and he said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine is before me. And on the vine, there are 3 tendrils, and it seemed to be blossoming, and its buds came out. Then its clusters ripened into grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. That was the dream. The dream was vineyard, tendrils. Tendrils are like young grapes, correct? Is that what tendrils are? Is anybody familiar with vineyards? I believe tendrils are like very small buds of grapes. So what happened was that these tendrils started blossoming and ripening into grapes, and then he squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup. That was the dream. So Joseph said to him, the interpretation, verse 12, this is the meaning, this is its meaning. The 3 tendrils are 3 days. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will number you with the other officers. He'll count you with the other officers, and he will restore you to your position. and you will place Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to your previous custom when you were his cupbearer. So your dream of squeezing grapes into Pharaoh's cup and putting it into his hand, it's a prophetic vision that in 3 days' time, you will be restored to your post as the royal butler. Makes sense. By the way, in 3 days, what was going to happen in 3 days? It was going to be Pharaoh's birthday. And on his birthday, he wanted special wine. So he said, where's the butler? Don't you remember you threw him into prison? All right, bring him out. So that's what happened in 3 days. No, that's literally the story that happened. So listen, when you're Pharaoh, you got so many things going on. Who can remember where the butler is? Where's the butler? I haven't seen him for months. Hello, right? Okay, listen, it is what it is. But look what Joseph says. Verse 14, this is incredible. But remember me when things go well with you. And please do me a favor and mention me to Pharaoh, and you will get me out of this house. That's what he says to him. He says, when you get out in 3 days, put in a good word for your buddy Joseph, right? Put in good word for me. And then he goes into his appeal. For I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, right? I was kidnapped and sold, and here too I've done nothing, for which they put me into the dungeon. I'm innocent, Joseph tells the butler, help me get out. All right, that's it. Next story. Now the chief baker saw that he had interpreted well for the butler. So the baker said to Joseph, me too. Explain my dream also. In my dream, okay, now he launched into his dream. In my dream, behold, there were 3 wicker baskets on my head. It's a lot of baskets for one head. And, it's stacked, one on top of the other. And in the topmost basket were all kinds of Pharaoh's food, the work of a baker. So all sorts of breads. I'm thinking croissants, and I don't know if that's bread. No, that's not a bread. Or maybe it is. Sandrine, help me out here. What do we have? I'm gonna get French bread. Or is it called French bread?
Baguette.
Oh, baguette. That's it. Right. What am I thinking? Not croissant. Baguette. Right. So I'm picturing like fancy breads in the uppermost of the 3 baskets on this guy, on the butler's head in his own dream. And the birds, the birds, a little bit ominous. I hate to give away the interpretation, but a little bit ominous here. The birds were eating them from the basket atop my head. Oof. Wow. Listen, I'm an amateur. I'm no Joseph. I'm just saying that the dude that has the dream that he's actually squeezing olives into Pharaoh's hand and Pharaoh's drinking the wine, that seems like a more like positive dream than the dude that's carrying bread on his head and the birds are eating it from the top of his head. I'm just going to go out on a total limb and say that. So Joseph replied and he said, this is its meaning. The 3 baskets, yeah, you guessed it, are 3 days. In another 3 days, the birthday, Pharaoh will remove your head from you and hang you on the gallows. Don't listen. You and I can think like logistically, let's not even bother, right? He'll remove your head and hang you on the gallows and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. And obviously there's no, and don't forget to mention me because that's not a thing. To the butler, he said, hey, don't forget me. To the baker, he's like, sorry. Now it came about on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, right? Like I told you before, that Pharaoh made a feast for all his servants. And he counted the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among the servants. In other words, he was like, where's the butler and where's the baker? So what happened is he restored the chief cupbearer to his position as cupbearer, and he placed the cup, the butler did, on Pharaoh's palm, just like the dream. And the chief baker, he hanged, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Oh, one more thing. Verse 23. But the chief cupbearer, the butler, did not remember Joseph, and he forgot him. Typical. You had one mission. I said one request. Joseph says, just put in a good word. He forgot. All right. So here, this ends. That's how the Torah portion ends. Literally with that phrase, and he forgot him. So that's how the story ends. That's how the reading ends. And what's the message? So I want to talk about a few things. Give me like 3 minutes and we'll close it out. Number one, what is the difference between the sin, if you will, of the butler and the baker? Why was one restored and one executed? Well, on a very simple level, the commentaries explain that a fly could fly into the cup of wine after the cup of wine has been poured, and it might not be the butler's fault if the fly falls into the wine. But the baker, if you bake a loaf of bread with a stone inside, that's a bit negligent. Are you with me in the difference? Right? A fly flies in. You can't. Sometimes you don't know, you can't stop it. But if you're baking bread with a stone inside, that's a problem. So anyway, that's just a literal kind of a technical explanation. But one thing that I do want to mention is that this last verse of the Torah portion, that this guy did not remember him, he forgot him. Oh, here we go. The chief cupbearer did not remember on that day. So, it's always good to get things done right away when you think about it. So on that day of the birthday, when he was restored, he didn't remember him and he forgot him afterwards. Take a look at the rest of Rashi. This is powerful. Because Joseph relied on him to remember him, he was compelled to be confined for 2 more years. As it is said, praiseworthy is the man who made the Lord his trust and did not turn to the haughty. He did not turn to the Egyptians who are called the haughty. Okay, basically what that means is like this, that according to our sages, Joseph was sentenced by Hashem to languish another 2 years in prison. Why? Because he relied on human beings. He should have been praying to God and not, trying to curry favor with the butler who was no friend to him. Anyway, that's what it says. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's so wrong with asking someone to put in a good word? It sounds like the responsible thing to do. You're right. It is responsible to do. It is. If you have a way by natural means to do it, yeah, you should do that and not rely on a miracle. But Joseph was a little bit different. According to Kabbalah, Joseph was someone who was on such a high exalted level. He had access straight to the source. He didn't need to rely on people for things. He could turn straight to God. God communicated these interpretations with him. He had a direct connection. He had the red phone with the direct line. You pick up and you're already connected with the source. That's what he had. He had all access. So for Joseph to lower himself down, so to speak, to diplomacy, to playing the game on the ground, it's unnecessary. It was unnecessary for him to do. Anyway, so what's the message for us? The message for us is we have to remember where the blessings are coming from. Now, for us who are not necessarily on the same level as Joseph, not on that pure tzaddik level as Joseph, so we do need to make, our arrangements on the ground. But even when we do, we can't forget. We must always remember where the blessings are coming from. All right, that's it for this week. This week, again, like I said before, the energy of Joseph for me is a guy who faces adversity, oftentimes not of his own doing, but who never gets down, never gets despondent, never gets angry, never fights the situation, embraces it, is fully present, and is able to excel and succeed because he looks at life with clarity, with a sober, clear look. This is it. This is where I am. Let me make the most of it. Such a beautiful attitude, so important in life. All right, so that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed Vayeishev, and I enjoyed studying with you. Any questions, comments?
Rabbi, I just wanted to make sure. Can you check that I'm on the list for today to pick up at your house?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think I did see. Hold on, let me just double check. Yes, you are on the list.
Okay, perfect.
We'll see you
Should
soon.
I call you? Yeah, call you when I get there?
Sure. Yeah, I'll call me when you're on the way. That always helps. All right. Awesome. Yes.
I seen the Chayenu, like the Maftir, Shabbos Chanukah.
Yeah.
I never pay attention to that. Is that where does this come from?
Rani V'Simchi, I believe it is. It's a special Haftorah for Hanukkah.
Oh,
sometimes
Haftorah.
when there's a holiday that coincides with Shabbat, for the Haftorah, we mix it up a little bit for a, it talks about, I believe it talks about light and menorah, candelabra. So it has some sort of Hanukkah symbolism in it. So we do that Haftorah for this week.
Okay. No, but here it's a Maftir. So is it the Torah reading?
Oh, the Maftir as well. Yeah. The Maftir as well. Yes. Yeah, there's a Torah reading that we do on throughout Hanukkah. talks about the hold on. I'll get you the intel in a second. One second.
Okay.
So it's actually in the back of the Siddur. So it's not a biblical holiday.
Is it in the scroll or?
Yes, for sure. So it's not a biblical. If it was a biblical holiday, we would read. We would only read for the holiday. But since it's not a biblical holiday, so it's kind of a more minor holiday, somewhat, although it's major in our hearts. So what we do is we read the normal Torah portion, but then we append it to the maftir. That's what we do. We do like a brief reading. It's from the book of Numbers, and it talks about the day that the Mishkan was inaugurated. The tabernacle was inaugurated. And remember, we learned this together in DPP a few months ago, how the first 12 days of that month, when they first put up the tabernacle, every day one of the 12 tribes brought their offering to inaugurate the altar. So we go through every day, a few of the offerings on that day. So yeah, that's what we're going to do tomorrow. We do it today, we do it tomorrow. And on the 8th day,
Okay, so that part of the Torah is only read on Maftir on Shabbos Chanukah.
No, the book of Numbers is read also in the normal order when we're going to get up to it in a few months.
Okay.
But we read it now in the spirit of Hanukkah, because remember, Hanukkah celebrates the re-inauguration of the temple after it was defiled by the Greeks. So in a sense, they kind of like restarted the temple service. So to commemorate the restarting of the temple service, we read from the Torah the original story of how it was started in the first place. So that's the connection. Just like the Mishkan, the Mizbeach, the altar was inaugurated those first 12 days of Nisan in the year 2449, a year after the Exodus, for the first 12 days by each of the 12 tribes. So too, after Hanukkah, they got things restarted. Hanukkah also means inauguration. Chinuch is also training, inauguration. So it's a day. It's not one day. It's a holiday of new starts, new beginnings for the temple. So we read about that. So there were 12 tribes and 12 offerings in the first 12 days. There's only 8 days of Hanukkah. You're probably wondering about the math. So on the 8th day of Hanukkah, we finish off the rest. So we read the 8th day offering, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So the last day reading is a little bit longer. But that's what we append to this Shabbat's Torah reading at the end for them after. Anyway, sometimes, by the way, Shabbat Hanukkah is also Rosh Chodesh. So you would read actually 3 readings: the Torah portion, the Hanukkah reading. Well, you would actually do different order: the Torah reading, the Rosh Chodesh, new moon reading, and the Hanukkah reading. But this year it's not like that. This year it's only 2. But some years you would take out 3 Torah scrolls, because you would read a section from different parts. And it's always preferable to bring out different scrolls as opposed to having to roll it mid-service, because then everyone waits. And Jews in waiting, it's never a good thing. You never want to make Jews wait. It's not always a not good recipe. I'm only kidding.
So here's the beginning is on the second day. So it's particular to this year. I mean, we're reading that part because
today
Shabbat is going to be the second day.
100%. Today is the first day, and tomorrow's the second day. So we read it lined up with the day. And like I said, on the 8th day of Hanukkah, you read for the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th of the inaugurations. But yeah, tomorrow, which is the second day, we'll be reading the second day inauguration story.
Is it the same tune?
Yeah, same. Yeah, Torah
regular
reading.
tune.
It's a normal Torah reading. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Good to see everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Good
Happy
Shabbos.
Hanukkah.
Happy
See you tomorrow night,
Hanukkah.
hopefully. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye all.